Welcome to the show.
I think construction gets kind of a bad rap in terms of that it's an industry that people think is tech averse or they avoid technology or they're not open to it. I think that's changed recently. It was enough risk coming here and building a business. Now you want to leave that and start your own. It contributed tremendously to what I had to do. The lead foreman on the job site, these are like generals on the job site. They're running crews, they're running traffic, they're handling everything. When you look at the course load for any engineering degree, it's not the easiest. There's a lot of high level math and it kind of pushes you to leverage AI in a way that is going to give you, the client or the user, a wonderful experience, but also an art.
Beautiful. You should probably write the book. Hi, Joe Leiva. Welcome to The Future Builds. I'm so excited to have you. How are you doing?
Hey, Sam. I'm good. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. So for the audience that doesn't know you, can you tell us what your company is and what problem does it solve in the industry?
Sure, yeah. So Kaster, at a high level, it is a subcontractor compliance tool that's used by the prime contractor to automate weekly certified payrolls and workforce compliance. So we basically handle compliance on government and publicly funded construction projects.
So who is your primary client base? Is it the subcontractors mainly?
It is the prime contractor, and on the projects, they will invite the subcontractors to use Kaster. So there's a bit of teamwork and collaboration happening, but it's the prime contractor that sets it up and invites the subs, and the subs use Kaster to generate their weekly certified payroll reports.
Perfect. So could you walk me through the process of payroll and why you have to do it and why it was a problem that you needed to solve?
Yeah, so I'd say in the US, for probably the last almost 100 years or so, any publicly funded job, whether it's federal, state, local, if it's a construction project, and some maintenance jobs as well, they have what's called posted prevailing wages, which basically sets a minimum standard of hourly pay and fringe benefits to all workers. So your laborers, your carpenters, electricians, truck drivers, they could be operators, anyone that's doing hands-on physical labor on the job site has to report those hours. The subcontractor puts it on a form and then they submit that to the prime, and the prime then submits that to the owner. And a lot of times that impacts compliance on the job and can even impact monthly payments. Very important piece of documentation that's due on a weekly basis.
I agree. I have worked some on the public side, so I am aware, although I didn't personally work on compliance myself or payroll, but I 100% agree that it's a very rigorous documentation process that it requires. So how does Kaster take that and digitize that and make it simpler?
Yeah. So once you launch a project with Kaster, the prime contractor or the owner in this case can upload or sync that list of wages on the job. So it says like laborers have to earn this much an hour and this much of fringe benefits, carpenters, et cetera, et cetera. And once that's set up, Kaster uses that data, that information to validate the weekly entries for the worker hours. So you mentioned when it creates that form or makes it digital, Kaster actually won't generate any form unless all of the entries are validated. So basically, to walk you through on a weekly basis, a subcontractor will log into Kaster, put in the hours and the paycheck information for each worker on that project. And then when they go to hit submit, Kaster will generate the PDF or whatever format for that certified payroll only if you pass the validation. And there's many safeguards in place. And those safeguards include cash wages, fringe benefits, total pay compensation, overtime rules. So there's many rules and layers that get involved. And basically, as long as you pass all the checks, we'll let you generate that report on a weekly basis and do it for you.
I see. So I definitely see a benefit in that it becomes a more efficient process, and also you're checking that everything is in place and it's done right. When you started out, what was the reception like to a digital tool versus what they had before?
Yeah, I would say that the reception on these jobs, especially on the projects where they were doing it manually, so there are a lot of companies out there that are still just filling it out by hand, or they're just filling in a fillable PDF. and just sending it into the prime contractor via email. There's no reporting, there's no transparency, there's no reviews or validation checks being done. It's just kind of like the wild, wild west. So those people, we save them a tremendous amount of time, not just the subcontractors on a weekly basis. It makes it easy for them to report weekly, but really for the prime contractor, it's a tremendous ROI because they don't have to spend time chasing down the forms on a weekly basis, reviewing them, and just making sure that the maths out basically. So there's a lot of work involved if there's no system in place. For the other ones that do have a system in place, it's typically a legacy platform or a legacy system that's been used. And we try to make ours more modern, more user friendly. We integrate with existing tools, and we leverage AI when possible. So it's definitely a more modern take on the process.
Got it. That's amazing. You mentioned AI in your workflows. How is AI involved in the process that you're offering?
Yeah, so the way we use AI is that certified payrolls and Caster, the workflows are all hard coded. So like that's already in place. What we do in our end is we try to identify areas in which we can leverage AI to fill in gaps, whether that be an agent that sits like a chatbot in our system that is there to answer very specific questions about the jurisdiction that they're in, labor compliance laws, or how to fill out the form or what it means. Things that aren't, the things that they would need readily available. Also, we have what's called, we've trained our system to recognize the various files and formats in which the wage rates are listed on. So whether it's a PDF or a spreadsheet or some other format, we can ingest federal level, state level, and local level wage rate sheets. So that way it's a very easy setup process. You don't have to spend time building a list out. And also these subcontractors, they use a QuickBooks or an ADP or a Paychex or some other payroll system to generate some type of payroll ledger. And rather than having to transcribe that data by hand manually, we've generated what we call an AI ingester that you basically upload those PDFs or formats, and our system will do a really good job at mapping that data and doing the form for you from one to the others. Basically, what are areas that are done kind of manually or semi-autonomously that we can just fully automate or at least speed up the process with AI? So many applications.
I 100% agree with you on that. We recently started exploring some AI options into spec reading, and it's amazing because, there's always been Bluebeam keyword search, but when you have AI, it's like looking at so many different words at the same time, trying to put together like bit packages for you. So I feel like that redundancy of one person trying to go through 1,000 pages and then missing out a few things here and there, AI kind of like pulls those together, and then it could be up to your discretion whether, that's good information or bad. But oftentimes the response I get when I talk about AI in, bringing AI workflows is who checks if AI is right, and what if AI missed something that was very obvious for a human being to understand and know that it's wrong, but AI doesn't have that intelligence yet. How do you counter those questions or those doubts that your customers could have?
Yeah. Well, first of all, when you were telling that story about specs, I wish I had a tool like that myself. All that we're using today, whether it's ChatGPT, Caster for certified payrolls, or some other system that can just help do 90% of the work, what I call like the labor intensive manual grunt work, that's great because it allows me to free up more time to do more important things. But I think our clients and our subcontractors, I think construction gets kind of a bad rep in terms of that it's an industry that people think is tech averse or they avoid technology or they're not open to it. I think that's changed recently. I think the conversations that I have now, people are using AI tools. Subcontractors are using it. So they're open to it and they understand that the capabilities and how it can help. I think internally at Caster, what our team coins AI is trust but verify. Like you're not going to write an email in ChatGPT or some other system and just trust it fully. You, as a human, still need to take a glance at it, spot check it before you actually send out that email. So we kind of see it that way too, where trust but verify.
Mm-hmm. I kind of echo with you on that. Do you personally use AI
on a daily basis?
Yeah, okay.
Daily, yeah. Every hour.
What do your AI use cases look like?
Yeah, for the most part, it's helping just from my standpoint as a CEO and founder, whether it's a communication with clients, customer success, if it's sales, if it's even investor quarterly newsletters, like you always want to speed up the process and like upload a template of an email that you used before, put some inputs in, have it generate something, it'll send it right back to you, you tweak it, and you always have the finishing touch as a human. So it's kind of like basically getting me from, instead of from A to Z, get me, A to Y, almost as Z, and then I'll finish the rest. I mean, I'm using it always for emails. Our sales team uses it for, for outreach, if we're doing, email outreach or campaigns. So there's just so many use cases for it. And of course, I just talked about in the product how our team is using clever ways to, even though our system is hard coded for the workflows, there's a layer on top of that where you can identify gaps to insert AI to kind of alleviate any bottlenecks or obstacles. So many use cases.
I 100% agree with you. I do use AI a lot on daily basis too. It's like, it's like an assistant to me. It makes me do a lot of redundant stuff more efficiently, I believe, whether it's emails, whether it's writing posts, even marketing, trying to, reach out to more people for my podcast and stuff like that. It just makes like all this networking so much more accessible now with the help of AI. So I'm always someone who propagates the use of AI, and I'm very excited what it brings into construction. But talking about construction, you have a very interesting background in construction. So can you walk me, a few steps back on like how did you get into the industry, and what brought you to finally start Kaster? Like, what was the journey like?
Certainly. It's kind of like, certified payrolls is such an obscure niche, workflow. How did I end up here, right? I was born into a construction family household. So my parents still run and operate a subcontracting company out in Maryland. So they do a lot of heavy civil jobs, a lot of DOT work in and around the Capital Beltway in DC, Maryland, and Virginia. And, I went to college, got my civil engineering degree, went to work for the family business, and that's how I got exposed. I mean, my first job was to go out in the middle of June after graduating college, going right to a job site on a highway, in the blistering heat, and being in the middle of a excavation for storm drainage pipe and just getting a hands-on experience, because you don't learn that stuff in college. But yeah, I just kind of was following in my father's footsteps. He came to this country, worked as a laborer back in the 60s and 70s. So he was trained by some of the very best back then, worked his way up as a foreman, project manager, and then decided that he wanted to take the risk and start his own construction company. And then my mom, she was a nurse at the time, doing the night shift at the hospital. And he convinced her to quit that gig and team up with him and run kind of like the office administrative stuff. So she's doing payroll, she's doing the financials, she'll do like the basically all the bookkeeping, all the administrative work. And so I got a nice exposure from, on the field, blue collar aspect of what my father kind of, what I learned from him was managing the labor, the workforce, and the day to day on the job site itself. And then the other aspect, which is more, behind the scenes, accounting, payroll, administrative, and everything has to be down to the T or to the penny. And so I got to be exposed to both sides of the business and work with them on some major projects over the years until I decided to, my parents thought I was crazy, but I just decided to go ahead and just venture off on my own, and leave the family business and take the risk of, the entrepreneurial journey, shall we say.
That's fantastic. That's a very interesting story. So you said you did civil engineering back then. Was your family supportive of that, especially given that you could directly go into the family business and, get your boots on the ground experience?
Yeah, I think at first, that was the initial plan, is just, take on the family business, learn the tools of the trade, and, get my engineering degree, get my PE license, and then scale the business. And I think, just something in me, I just saw an opportunity. And I think I get that from my family, from my parents. They're entrepreneurs. My grandmother was an entrepreneur. So it just kind of, we have just a lineage of like building businesses, so it's a bit counterintuitive if, it's coming from a family where they came from outside the US, came here to start a business, you would think that as children of that generation, don't make it any more riskier. You know, it was enough risk coming here and building a business. Now you want to leave that and start your own. Like that's kind of counterintuitive, but I think it's kind of the beauty of this country and having that opportunity here. So far it's been the right choice.
It's very interesting because you always had that entrepreneurial, like, drive. So you wanted to start out on your own, explore on your own. Do you think education, your civil engineering education specifically, carved you into a person that you are, or do you think it could have been more practical? Like, I don't mean to get into the debate about whether college education is important, but did it contribute in any way to what you do now?
It contributed tremendously to what I had to do. And I say that because my co-founder was the first person I met at college orientation. He's our CTO. He came from, he has a very similar family background where they came to this country and, so he understands the entrepreneurial spirit as well. His family ran small businesses. And then I would say that exposure in the classroom as well, a lot of the connections I made in civil engineering, those people went on to do work in the construction field. And so like I was able to build a network of some early clients or some folks just from my former classmates. And I think that civil engineering, going into it, when you look at the course load for any engineering degree, I mean, it's not the easiest. There's a lot of calculus, a lot of physics, a lot of, mechanics of materials and statics and statistics. I mean, there's a lot of high level math and it kind of pushes you. I think it kind of gave me confidence because by going through that course load, it made me realize if I can solve these high level math and physics problems and engineering problems, I can go out to the world and solve anything. And then in addition to that, where I went to school, the University of Maryland, they have a very robust, in the state of Maryland, very robust venture capital networks. University of Maryland has their own angel group for angel investing. And there's many funds tied to University of Maryland for early stage venture capital at the accelerator level, at the pre-seed level, and at the seed level and beyond. So that whole ecosystem was tremendously valuable for me.
I mean, I always ask this question to people, and I always hear that it is so important to have that kind of college education, one, because it pushes you to learn. And it actually teaches you the process of learning, which is so important in every aspect of your life, no matter what. So I've heard the same or similar answers from everyone I speak to. And, just to echo on that, I did my civil engineering degree too. Went through the high highs and the low lows of geotechnical engineering and then hydraulics. I hated hydraulics, but just going through that, it just taught me so much. And I was just working on something this week when my boss asked me, do you know how to calculate backfill for retaining walls? And I'm like, of course I do, because I know how those loads act on a retaining wall. So I think it just helps to have a certain background in structures or in construction to be doing what you're doing. Of course, you could do estimating without any construction background, but you still need like a backup of either experience or things like these that come up. So yeah, that's interesting. That's very interesting. Are you still connected with your alumni at University of Maryland?
Absolutely. They've gone on to do great things. They're senior project managers at construction companies, or they've gone on the engineering route and gone to the supply chain. So the friends of you've mentioned retaining wall. So I know friends that work at retaining wall precast supplying companies as well. So yeah, no, they've gone on to be, whether they're early angel investors in my company, or they introduced me to one of our first clients, or they're a co-founder, like in my case. And even in the personal side, you mentioned it earlier, like just making connections and networking. I think college is a fantastic place to do that. I mean, they've gone to be lifelong friends.
I clearly see how it has actually shaped you into who you've become. But when you started out on your own, were you scared to do it alone? And when you pitched out to investors, how was that feeling like? And how did you teach yourself those things?
Yeah, I think I wasn't scared. I would say it was more just like I was excited because like I knew that I was going to put myself in a position that was uncomfortable. I was going to have to sell the place I lived in before. I had a kind of a career path with my family where I had my own place, I had my own car, I had my own things, but it just wasn't fulfilling for me. I needed to do and create something on my own. I just, as stubborn as it sounds, I needed to do something. And so I sold my place, I sold my car, I packed my bags, and I moved into my parents' basement. And I stayed there. And that's how we were bootstrapped until we were able to get going, I guess. And I was happy to do that. As much as it, kind of was a bit of an impact in the middle of my life because I was going on this career trajectory of running my family's business and just kind of expanding and scaling their business to kind of abruptly stop and just kind of hit the reset button to feel like that was maybe been a little bit traumatic, because it impacts your social life and your financials. You don't have a steady salary anymore. But thankfully, in my case, I have a wonderful family and they were supportive and they took me back in, even though they thought that by raising me and sending me to college, that was it. Having me come back as a 30-some-year-old, wasn't in their plans, but they were happy to have me there and provide support. As much as it was a shock for them initially when I announced that I was going to leave the company and start my own venture, I think they understood because they did it themselves.
That's a very nice story, and it's great that you had the family support.
Very fortunate for that.
Yeah, definitely. About your entrepreneurial journey, were there any misconceptions or certainties that you thought were about the market that were busted as soon as you got out there?
Yeah, you definitely, on the very, very early days, you learn that just because you've worked in the industry, like in myself, that just because you build it, you expect them, they're going to come. They're going to just go to your website and they're going to find you on Google and they're going to sign up. It doesn't work that way. When you build your first prototypes, you definitely learn the hard way that you need to reach out to potential prospects or clients and like interview them, show them mock-ups before you spend time hard coding and building something from scratch, because you're going to spend a lot of time tearing it back down or re-engineering something, and it's just a lot of time wasted. So even though I heard from colleagues that warning and from advisors, and you read about it. In my case, it was a bit stubborn. I really wanted to get something out there so fast and build it because I thought, hey, I lived it myself. I was a former project manager. I was a former project engineer. I know all these things. So of course, what I build is going to be right. But it's a humbling moment when you realize that it doesn't work that way.
So what helped you to reach to more people? Like, especially now, like, I think now the ecosystem for software is a little bit different. Like, there's so many software coming out, and there's so many different sources like LinkedIn and conferences where where you see them, keep seeing them. How was that journey for you? Like, how did you market and grow over time?
Yeah. In our case, I think what helped the most is by being very hyper focused. So when we first started off, we were doing, we were kind of digitizing forms for subcontractors, and we thought that was the path. And we quickly found out that wasn't the case. And then we pivoted to building a general compliance platform for prime contractors where they can see and run reports on their subcontractor compliance. And, that was mildly successful. And I think when we kind of made the pivot to, what, we need to hyper focus and not be good at a lot of things, but be great, be the best in class at one thing. And when we made that shift to certified payrolls, and that was the game changer for us because it was largely ignored in the technology landscape, but yet it impacted so many clients because everyone doing publicly funded construction projects in this country has to go through certified payrolls. And so I think, it was something that I experienced on my own, and I knew that it was a pain, but I had experienced pain in so many areas, not just that one. That was one of the more painful ones, but I figured I'm going to tackle them all at once. But it can be too big of a bite to chew at first. I think in our case, we learned that we need to just pick the worst of the worst case and just solve that one. And then maybe we can add on things later on. So all part of the entrepreneur journey. Reality has a way of, smacking you in the face and kind of humbling you.
I mean, you have unknowingly given a very wonderful piece of advice to anyone who's, starting out, venturing out into building a software. I think about problems on a daily basis. I really think that there's so much scope even in, like, just in pre-construction. So I can imagine there are so many parts in construction that need help, that need upgrade, that need digitization and AI and all of that. So I guess this is great advice for someone who's out there who thinks that I'm gonna put everything into one solution. And the truth is you need these bite-sized pieces that then can grow into that solution. So that's really great.
And to answer like your main question, like what fueled growth for us is once we went hyper focused, we knew exactly the folks and the companies that are in charge of that. So when you can filter your list down to publicly funded contractors and the people in the back office that are doing it. So once you kind of if you have such a hyper focus and niche, you're able to kind of pick the market and the folks that you're going to go after. So you go to the trade shows that has those people. You go, you do your LinkedIn and your email outreach to those people.
Yeah. So that's more focused messaging marketing.
Exactly.
That's great. So I want to, switch back into some of your leadership principles. You told us a lot about your background and how it shaped you. But what's your leadership philosophy? Who are you at the core and how do you lead as that person?
I believe in transparency between the teams. So between product, sales, marketing, I think we should all be in the know and stay connected. That way they don't feel like we're on islands and we're isolated because they are interconnected. The feedback you get from a client comes from customer success. Customer success then lets the sales team know about feature requests, and then the product team shares that. And then we all kind of got to meet and kind of do a bit of a triage. What product feature is going to provide you the biggest ROI for you as a company revenue wise, but also for your clients, but also be impactful. That's always keeping things transparent and interconnected. A big one too is communication. In this day and age with so many team members being remote, it's hard to convey a message or a tone or your feelings on something by typing it out on Slack. So I think having as many huddles as you want or voice conversations to just share ideas, that keeps communication going and honest. And I think with communication itself, one thing I learned as a leader is something I learned from watching, my father on the job site, my uncle who was the lead foreman on the job site. These are like generals on the job site. They're running crews, they're running traffic, they're handling everything. And what I learned from them is to just sit and listen, because there's people around you that have experience, they have ideas. I like to let people just talk and kind of share their ideas. And there's no idea that's dumb. I like thinking outside the box. A lot of times when we're developing a solution, sometimes we create our own problems. What I mean is that sometimes you'll ship a feature and you didn't think of everything. And that feature, which is a solution, now has its own problems. And you got to build solutions for those problems that you created on your own. It can be a compounding effect. Sometimes avoiding that is by thinking outside the box, I learned. So a lot of communication, a lot of transparency, and a lot of listening.
That's great. You mentioned communication. Now, I have seen a trend where a lot of young people, they are pro remote working. And a lot of seasoned people, they're like, you need to be in the office. What is your stance on what works better? And especially construction industry. I have seen that there are other industries that changed over time. Even after COVID, everything shifted remote and they could adapt to it. But I saw that construction companies mostly could not. Where's your stance on as a leader, how do you feel about the remote work culture versus in office all day, every day?
Yeah, I'm totally okay with it because for me it's more about what your productivity and what your output is. If you are the most productive at home and you do a lot of your thinking at home after hours or on the weekend, and you hit all your goals and more, then by all means do whatever you need. So I'm completely open with that. I think as a leader, it's our job to kind of maintain the culture, and so having team calls that are happening frequently. Don't strictly communicate through Slack. Get on the phone, get on a huddle, get on a Zoom call. And if people that are near you, we schedule offsites all the time. Whether it's quarterly with with some of our team members, or try to encourage that as well. So, I think of it kind of like a blend where you're going to communicate in all different aspects, and definitely don't avoid the in-person stuff for sure. But I'm all for it. I'm okay with the remote culture. On the construction job site, that's a little bit hard to do. I know for sure that I appreciated not having to go in to do a mobilization meeting as a contractor and have to sit at that table for, and sit in traffic, that can be done on a Teams or a Zoom call. Like there's things you can definitely do virtually that you didn't need, before you had to drive to a job site or a trailer and do. So I appreciated that.
Yeah, there's probably the answer is in the balance, right? There has to be like maybe just how we spoke about AI taking out redundancies. Maybe this is remote culture when needed and in person when it's, important. So I guess that balance could be the solution to it. And as we are approaching to the end of the conversation, I just wanted to touch a few things. What do you think is, coming up for the future of construction tech that you see? And, how do you think that landscape is changing for construction?
Yeah. I think we're already seeing it from a culture standpoint of the market and the clients and the subcontractors reception of AI is favorable. They're open to it. I think before COVID, traditional B2B SaaS was really challenging from a sales standpoint and from adoption standpoint. I think the use of AI now is a lot, it's everyone's willing to try it, and I think they wanted to succeed. 5, 10 years ago, I think they would push back on it. They just saw it as another tool, another login, another thing I have to learn and train on. But now they're open to it. They want it to work because they know that if they try, leveraging it to help write an email, they've experienced kind of a bit of the magic of it. That it can speed up a lot of the grunt work that I don't want to do. So I think the market is ready for it. They're cheering for it, and they want us to be successful as founders and building. Like you were saying, there's so many from pre-construction all the way to closeout and everything in between. There's just so many moving parts in construction, so many departments, so many areas of it, and so many stages that there's a lot of room for improvement. And I think it's on us as founders to leverage AI in a way that is going to give you, the client or the user, a wonderful experience, but also an ROI. So yeah, I expect to see this year at least just very clever use cases of AI that makes the need for training videos or help articles less and less. Like you should be able to pick things up without having to read a manual. And I think AI can help with things of that nature. I expect also product and feature developments to move faster. What maybe took a month to release should take half that time or less, whether it's coming up with a quick mock-up design or having a run of the code check or making tweaks to an existing prompt that you may have. Like things should be shipped faster, I believe. I expect to see an acceleration of ideas and features as we go along.
It's truly an exciting time to be in the context space and, in construction as well. Like, I just think that there's so much going on. There's new products and technology coming up every day. And it's an exciting time, especially if, some of these can make our processes so much more efficient, just like your product. So yeah, I want to leave you with one last question. So the question is, what part of your early days in your career or growing up, your background, cultural influence, anything that has shaped you and that has made you who you are today?
Yeah, hands down, it's working alongside my parents and particularly my father on the job site, just learning the leadership, learning how to negotiate contracts, learning how to negotiate change orders in the job site, getting the respect of your peers, listening to people, communication. I mean, I could write a book on all the things I learned just from my mom. Also, when she's running payroll, even though my father was very hands-on, very brute force production, bottom line, for driving revenue. My mom, on the other hand, was more careful, more cautious. Everything was done correctly when running payroll. Everything was done perfectly. Everything was filed in order. So like being exposed to running a business on the administrative side and seeing, things done on the job site from both of them, I just learned so much. It absolutely shaped who I am now, as an entrepreneur.
That's wonderful. That's really beautiful. You should probably write the book.
Yeah, I'll see if they want to be included or not.
Maybe they'll ask you for a commission.
Yeah, I have AI write the book for me. I don't have time right now.
Well, it was wonderful talking to you, Joe. This was really amazing. You gave us insights not just into your company, but also in business and construction. And, you gave us a lot of good leadership lessons. There's really so much to take from this conversation. I am Very happy that I got a chance to speak to you. Thank you so much for your time. And hopefully we talk soon, meet soon. Thank you so much.
Yes, no, absolutely. And thank you as well for having me on your podcast, Sam. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Likewise.